this.
That was, and then the article in the Current, they posted HDC, this is cool. That's the 99. And then did you see the article from 67? Bill Wethersfield High, behind South State. We built South State. And you went up to the high school
You're welcome. I mean, people listen, I'll tell them. Here, guys. I'm here. I just,
You can ask that question, right?
that's all I'm doing. If you get challenged or sued,
This was the tear down, but there was a Hartford Current article.
I didn't print that.
Okay. That was the cool one. Like that. Take down Stillman. Yeah, right. It's fine. All right, guys, thank you. We're not used to the big room like this, so we do appreciate the turnout tonight. This is a special meeting of the Wethersfield Historic District Commission. We're short a couple commissioners. We also have our regularly scheduled meeting tomorrow night. Our names are here. This session is going to be a presentation by, I believe, the building committee and the architects or consultants for the referendum question that will be in front of us sometime later this year. There will not be any public comment from the public. We have, I believe Kim told us today, we have already over 700 emails have been submitted to the HDC, Wethersfield HDC at wethersfieldgov.com. So if you do have any specific questions from what you hear tonight, please get us up over 800. With that, I'd like to introduce, I apologize for not knowing your names, who is here tonight to make the presentation. So when you come up, name and the firm and your business addresses, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael Scott. I'm a partner with TSKP Studios in Hartford, Connecticut, Willis Street, joined by Randall Luther, and also here from the consulting team is Tom Romagnoli from Downs Construction, as well as just members of the building committee. If you just raise your hand. Yeah, there we go. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate the special meeting. I understand you're meeting tomorrow night, so I really appreciate you coming out here. I'll give you just a little bit of background. Just notice the slide's a little cut off, but hopefully we can get through this without too much hiccup. Tonight, basically, I just want to for those who are not aware, I wanted to summarize the activities of the school building committee up until this point. And then really the purpose of this meeting is to really hone in on how the comprehensive plan for Wethersfield Elementary Schools may affect either the Stillman site or the Hanmer site as school construction activities, okay? And then briefly just remind you of the schedule. The other thing that I'm acutely aware of is that this is indeed, I believe, a special meeting for you all insofar as while Downs and TSKP have been working on this comprehensive plan for some time, we are really not presenting to you any form of architecture or site plan. That is not what we're under contract to do, and in fact, it's only upon successful referendum that this town will seek architectural services for one of these projects in this area. So, you know, with any luck, in some manner of years, we'll be presenting to you an actual formal proposal, or someone who looks a lot like me will be doing the same thing, because something has to happen with Hanmer. That will eventually happen. What we really want to talk about is just from a master planning standpoint, get a sense of this commission's feel for the Stillman site, the Hanmer site, rules of engagement for either of those areas in the HDC. Okay? So we were hired in the fall of last year to work with the building committee to put together a comprehensive plan to address the needs of Wethersfield 5 elementary schools. What the building committee has coalesced around up until now is essentially 4 primary tenets of the plan. One is to maintain a school at each of the 5 sites. In other words, do not shutter a current school site. Therefore, Hanmer will be involved in some way, shape, or form. There will be school construction activity at some point in time in the historic district to address Hanmer. 2 is to, with Webb, rather than continue that as a K-6 academy, a K-6 school, to take advantage of some features of that building and of that site and convert it to a 5-6 intermediate school. What that does in turn is allow the other 4 elementary school sites, Hanmer being one of them, to go down to a K-4 school. And in the case of Hanmer, this allows actually a reduction in the square footage for a school in that area. And in doing so is the third tenet of this comprehensive plan thus far, is to right-size the schools in each of these sites to essentially distribute a more equal balance of classroom size, students per classroom, and grade configuration across the elementary schools. Right now, as you move from school to school, because of the various districts and the various constraints of classroom count, classroom sizes, classroom populations can range from 19 to 28 students per classroom, which by the strength of the faculty, they're able to overcome this, but the comprehensive plan would represent a level setting of that for the next, 20 years at least. And lastly, an important tenet of this comprehensive plan is to build a new school to create swing space as the initial phase of this multi-phase plan. This will allow a school's worth of population to move to a different facility while their neighborhood school is renovated as part of the process. This was viewed as an important step to mitigate impact to the educational academic year of that student population, as well as to help secure the students in a safe environment during what is contemplated to be rather extensive renovations, and also to maximize the town dollar to go into permanent construction rather than temporary logistics to provide safe environments, mitigating construction in occupied school sites. So those 4 things. Each of those 4 things then aggregate to have special implication for the Hanmer Stillman site. And so basically I want to outline for this commission 2 scenarios. One is the current plan under consideration by the building committee, which is to build that swing school on the vacant space that is between Garden and the Stillman building on the Stillman site. And then at the end of the comprehensive plan, potentially return back to that site and demolish the 1966 Hanmer School. The idea is when you build a swing school, you don't keep both schools operating in close proximity to each other. We just need one school per neighborhood So once the comprehensive plan is done and students are finished moving in and out of that swing space, then you return back and you demolish the existing school in favor of the new swing school that was built 6 to 8 years prior. That's one scenario I want to outline for you. And in absence of that scenario, there's a scenario of if we don't do that and we put the swing school someplace else, eventually we will need to return to Hanmer and engage Hanmer in a meaningful way. Bring that architecture up to contemporary educational standards, especially bring it up to contemporary school security standards, and likely shrink its footprint. Because it's Hanmer, curiously enough, is the largest school in the system, even though it has such a light population. Its classroom count is about the same, but its classroom sizes are quite large. And it ends up being a relatively large school that's sort of tucked back in the center of that block. Okay? So that being said, I'm going to start with the Stillman scenario. And again, this is a diagram by which we would build, let's see. I think you all can orient yourself. This existing Stillman building is at the bottom of the page. Francis Street, which is the demising line between the Hanmer property and the Stillman parcel, is running up and down on that page. And Garden is sort of the hypotenuse of the triangle that you're looking at. In this scenario, you see where we would build a school by which volumetrically is largely a two-story building, where you see the cluster of grades. That would be physically a real two-story grade with the younger kids on the ground floor, and then the upper grades, perhaps even 2, 3, and 4 on the second floor. To the south of that, that double story of classrooms, we build the remainder of the school, which is the media center, the cafeteria, and the gymnasium. These spaces, just like the existing school, tend to be double height spaces anyhow. Certainly the gymnasium does. It's likely because of the student population count. The cafeteria may not be a full 2 stories, but it will be a story and a half, as well as the media center. Administration could be a low-slung wing. What we're doing is we're expanding the parking lot behind the existing Stillman building to create not only parking for this new school, but also create a bus loop back there for that population. And then we're adding a new road on the opposite side of that between the school and Standish Park, which would be reserved for car traffic. It would have perpendicular parking for visitors, but would largely be used in the mornings and in the afternoon for car pickup and drop-off of the population. Towards the north end of that property, where you see the red dashed circle, that's the existing playground facility that currently resides on the Stillman site. Hanmer is the smallest school site you have in the district. It's 5 acres. There isn't play facilities on site for Hanmer, so they make use of Standish Park. We would expand that for the swing school. So there would be a school presence on Standish Park, likely regardless of what you do, being a swing school or renovate or rework Hanmer on Hanmer's site. This would be phase 1 of the referendum. So this work, design work, would commence in likely 26. Construction would commence likely in 27. And then on the back end of this, because Hanmer then, once students are done moving through Hanmer as a swing school, is no longer needed, and that center block site of 5 acres would be cleared, and the ball field that was displaced by the swing school could be put into the middle of the block there as well. So once it's complete, the site would comport itself back to be about an 11-acre site, 6 being Standish and 5 coming from Hanmer. That would be a total plan. Obviously, it involves building something on Standish Park and removing Hanmer in its entirety. So I could take questions now, or I could go on to the other scenario.
Can you explain the swings, how that is actually going to work and who's going to be tending that? So phase 1, you mentioned, will be building on the park here. So the Hanmer kids go when?
Okay, so in this scenario, what would happen is the swing school would be constructed, and the Hanmer student population would move immediately into the swing school facility upon its completion. And then for the duration of the rest of the comprehensive plan, the existing Hanmer would be occupied by the other school populations. So essentially, the first day of school after the swing school is complete, Hanmer kids start attending classes in the swing school, and then Hanmer gets filled with the web population.
Yeah, because just earlier, your earlier comments were the 2 schools being together and not operational. That's what I just wanted to clarify.
Right.
in my-
So
they
okay.
would be, yeah, for potentially a period of time.
For the duration of the comprehensive plan, which is 8 to 10 years, you could have 2 schools of population on these 2 sites. Okay.
I also have a question on that.
And just to clarify what else is happening during the comprehensive plan, so Webb is then being renovated so that it becomes the 5 and 6 grade intermediate school? Okay. Are there any other parts of the plan that happened during that time, just so that we know?
No. Essentially, the building committee is looking to take 1 school at a time. And as long as we're more or less renovating them, even if it's an aggressive renovation, which can often be almost an entire gut of the building, typically you can start that in June as soon as the students move out, do your demolition work, and then have the facility ready again by that following August when buses are about ready to pull up. So that's a 14-month disruption. It's very hard on the construction managers, but it can work. And if you do that one at a time, you can get into a pretty good rhythm where every year you're applying for a grant and you're executing another school complete and checking it off your list.
Please excuse me. Please explain to me. Hanmer goes in, if we decide to build a swing school there, Hanmer students would go into the swing school.
Correct.
Web students would come down and go into the swing school also,
No, they would go into the existing Hanmer facility.
Hanmer school. So we are going to have 2 schools operating at the same time within
That's
100
right.
yards of each other.
That's right. That's right.
And where do the buses, when the 2 schools are going on, where do the buses go?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we, in evaluating swing schools, one thing we liked about Hanmer is while it is tight on its site, the vehicular traffic is really to the upper portion of that page, right? The parking lot and all the drives come in and then exit off of Garden. And then we felt that the other schools, the swing school traffic is really moving towards the bottom of that page. So while everyone's down on that triangle, you're at least entering and exiting from opposite sides of that triangle, which will allow, hopefully, them to disperse without affecting each other. The other thing that should be clear is that elementary school traffic is uncomfortable for about 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon. In this scenario, the start times would be staggered such that only one school would be onboarding students and discharging students at a time. So the schedules would be slightly shifted. That would elongate the period of disruption on this block, but it wouldn't put both layers of buses and cars there at the same time.
All right.
So use Rosedale.
I think by what you've shown me here, living here quite a while, my kids and my grandkids going there, I think you're underestimating the car traffic. The foot traffic is light. The car traffic is quite heavy. Right now, they enter through Rosedale.
Yes.
Are you going to close Rosedale down? You're not going to enter that way?
No, the traffic that is for the existing Hanmer school building, whether that's a Webb population or eventually Highcrest, would all come in through Rosedale and exit onto Garden.
As it does right now?
As it does right now. And then the swing school site would all come in from Garden and exit down onto Hartford Avenue, both buses and cars.
So you've mentioned that you're going to stagger the start times. Well, what are we talking? 20 minutes? 30 minutes? 45 minutes?
Well, that's up to BOE, but it's not going to be 45 minutes. I mean, these are still elementary schools, and it's going to have to comport to the overall busing schedule for...
That's my concern.
Yeah, but I would say you would shift them to eliminate any normal overlap. You know, these schools, Hanmer, it's intense in the afternoon, but it does more or less empty out in under 20 minutes. It just does. So if you could stagger them 20 minutes and get all of that activity in and out in 20 minutes and then start to load up at the swing school or vice versa, that would be the goal.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go to scenario 2. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a pictorial of the thing that shows Standish Park in the foreground, the swing school on the Stillman site, and then eventually Hanmer, you can see ghosted in the background as it's removed to be replaced by the field and open space.
Do we know that the existing Hanmer building can accommodate it can function perfectly well as the swing school?
We do.
So all the populations that are going to use it as a swing school can fit into that school?
Right. Yes, for what it's worth, the trick is to put Webb second, and once Webb is complete, then every 5th and 6th grader in the entire district will go to Webb. That will shrink the Highcrest and Emerson-William population such that they will fit into Hanmer. If you didn't do that, Hanmer doesn't have the classroom count to take on the Highcrest or Emerson-William population.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one more question. You mentioned that for each of the schools to be renovated, the town would apply for a grant to have funding to do those renovations. Is there any chance that this process would get stopped? So it would only partially happen, and you would have maybe Webb, I don't know, would it get stopped before Webb is renovated? Would it get stopped along the line? So we have, it's just all the schools aren't finished. We have 2 schools kind of permanently occupied next to each other.
I mean, there's no guarantees on any of this, but towards the end, when we talk about schedule, we can talk about scenarios of what is conceived to be the first referendum, what what the town gets for their money in that first piece, and then what could happen as part of that second referendum. We can also talk anecdotally about what some of your other local towns who have faced this have experienced. But, you know, certainly anyone who's been around the last few months knows that nothing is guaranteed with any of this, although usually when a school construction grant is applied for and approved, the money is there. It has not, in our experience, never not been there when it comes time for towns to start swinging a hammer. Okay?
Well, going along with what my fellow commissioner asked you, you are asking to build this on a historic site. It's
Yeah,
never been
in
built
a
on
historic
before.
district.
So we
yes.
don't know what we're going to find in the ground.
Agreed. In any of these sites, we don't know what we're going to find
But
in the ground.
especially this, being a historic district, once you hit anything that's historic, it stops.
Right, and that, I mean, Downs has direct experience of this in downtown Weathersfield. I mean, we recognize that as a risk. We have done phase one analysis of all the swing school sites, and they do not raise a red flag. But again, that is no guarantee that
Exactly.
some archaeological find will be uncovered at any of these sites. And you have to pick that up and adjust. I mean, that's also...
So, in other words, something's found, we're stopped for a month, 2 months, we don't know how long they would stop it for.
I agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. These are big projects, and they're a considerable undertaking. You cannot design and mitigate all risk out of it in advance of bonding the money to actually do the work. There's just no way around that. All you can do is be advised of the risk, try to manage that risk, budget for that risk, schedule for that risk, and then engage in the program. But and the Weathersfield's been around for a long time. Many of these sites, you could uncover something as soon as you start digging in the ground.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Has SHPO been involved with this process so far as like determining if it was architecturally not risky, but there might be something in that ground or testing the ground, or I mean, anything from...
SHPO was engaged in a preliminary portion to the extent of the phase one investigation, but that is just a way to go through the public records to identify potential risks involved.
They in their guidelines, or their version of the guidelines, they are involved in identifying identification of significant historic architectural and archaeological resources. So, yeah, whether it's something from the Indians, dinosaur footprints, something.
Right. If that existed, then that would have, if such a record existed, that would have shown up in the phase one investigation that said, once upon a time, signs of Native American encampments were uncovered back in the 50s when they put in the ball field, or whenever they put in the ball field, or if they found, to your point, fossilized dinosaur tracks in the sandstone or something. That would have been part of the phase one. Doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that SHPO doesn't have a record of significant finds on that site.
Are they required to keep up with that, with newer methods as far as ground radar and newer dig methods and more complete analysis?
I'm not aware that SHPO is out actively imaging.
Well, I mean, or just overseeing, saying it should be done or not, so they get the results. Someone else does the work, but...
When this project is, when the comprehensive plan is funded and a design team engages in efforts, there will be a full SHPO review, just like there'll be a full review with the HDC on whatever project emerges in this area. But that full extent hasn't played out, and to Downs' experience, even if you do all of that, that doesn't mean anything, because as soon as the excavator puts a shovel in the ground and they uncover something, everything stops to the other comment. The activities have to stop.
Just a quick follow-up too, and you had mentioned the phase one and some of the preliminary work that was done. Was the building committee and yourselves familiar with the whole history of school buildings currently there, the Stillman building, why they went to Hanmer? Was that handled, or what consideration was given to that? Because we have been down this road when this, as you mentioned, in 1966, when the property was purchased specifically to remove it, the tearing down of Stillman, building the new school there on that site, and then the alternative was found, luckily, to put it painted in, as we were told, to that spot.
Okay.
What can you, maybe this is jumping the gun, because again, our purview, we are asking some specific questions as to the flow, and that, but again, our charge is is it appropriate for that area and maintain
Right.
the district? So can you respond to that?
I can only respond that I was not aware of that bit of Weathersfield history until the last building committee meeting that we had.
And it's
far
almost as
as-
recent as '99 when Lee Erdman, as town manager, came to demolish Stillman School. And again, we can only rule on applications, and this is,
Yeah.
we're not ruling on anything tonight. But HDC denied the demolition of that building. And of course, in '66, actually the Hartford Courant's article in response to the town council, that site was purchased. It was going to be shoehorned in without a gym, was the proposal then. And they, of course, Mr. Pitkin, at the time, our rec director, said, you need a gym at a school, and the Hanmer property where it is now was purchased.
Okay.
So just, so that's, I guess, kind of what, history is in, the historical word is in there. So that's kind of where we'd like to see that addressed. And maybe later on in your presentation to the why it was chosen. But if I'm premature on that, I apologize. But
No.
That's a big question that for me.
Well, I think, just anecdotally, it's instructive. I just want to be clear, we're not looking to, it's curious, so we're not looking to demolish the Stillman building where the
No,
BOE
right,
is.
not now.
Right. So, and, it was, in our research, it was determined that Stillman was deeded over to the town for educational purposes. That's, other than no building, it seems like the only building you could put there would have to be for somehow educational purposes.
Understanding that,
Yeah.
but it also, yep, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's not end all, it has been proposed before. And
Okay. And that's, I don't want to, that's meaningful. I'm not discrediting the comment at all. That is meaningful that the town faced this decision twice and has been very consistent with this decision-making.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or concerns or questions about a scenario involving the Stillman site? Okay. So now I want to talk about Hanmer proper, which is that 5-acre site that was purchased in advance of the 1966 construction of what was then called the Old Weathersfield, the new Old Weathersfield Elementary School, which I love the nomenclature of that. But we're a little cut off there. Apologize for that, but maybe yours shows up. Yeah, you've got all yours. That's good. Just tried to orient you a little to the same thing. The site that Hanmer was eventually built on is 5 acres. And because it's all one story and because of its size, it is very tight on the site to the extent that there really is no outdoor play space. The two courtyards that exist are currently maintained only by the loving parent organizations and some pretty dedicated staff on the BOE side. And the students cross Francis every day in order to take advantage of the playground piece that's in that corner by Hanmer and Garden, by Francis and Garden. Apologies. If this is not a swing school site, eventually the town will need to apply for a school construction grant to address Hanmer School in some shape or form. I strongly suspect that that grant application will at least functionally call the Hanmer site both the existing parcel and the Stillman parcel, just to be clear. In order for any changes in the playground or upgrade of the playground to be eligible for state reimbursement, you'll have to pull that in as part of the site. If you kept the Hanmer site as depicted in this drawing, any off-site improvements would not qualify for reimbursement. So at some point in time, an architecture team will come to you about Hanmer, and they will make reference to Stillman as an important element.
So to be clear, you're saying that the recreation, the playground area is in order to get state money, is it inadequate? It doesn't serve the needs? How does that apply?
I think as part of a comprehensive plan, you will be motivated to upgrade that play structure and at a minimum put a fence around it, that sort of thing. And in order for the state to participate in that funding, you will want to count it as part of the Hanmer site. So it's just a matter of, you don't have to merge the parcel. You can keep the demising property line, but you'll need to draw a vigorous boundary around Hanmer.
It's much like that right now. I mean, Hanmer utilizes the space behind Stillman for recreational purpose, playing volleyball, kickball. They use it now.
I agree. I just, look, in this scenario, if Hanmer is not part of the swing school site, Hanmer will likely be the last school in this process, in which case activities around Hanmer will occur in like 2032 or something. I may not be here. TSKP may not be here, and some of you may not be here. I'm just saying out loud that eventually, if it isn't part of the swing school site, eventually, when talks about the referendum to address Hanmer come up, there will be discussions about the Stillman parcel, I think, regardless. And it doesn't mean we're going to build on Stillman. It doesn't mean we're going to put a classroom on Stillman. It just means you'll want to avail yourself of that asset, because the Hanmer site is 5 acres. It's the smallest site you have, and you need space for an educational program. And you should use it as you do now, but you should also take advantage of the state funding to do so.
Just to go on what you just stated, that Hanmer would be the last school to be renovated? And I'd like to know the reasoning behind that.
Well, I think a scenario by which we do not put a swing school here will need to be reevaluated by the building committee. The last time we touched on that, shuffled the order such that Hanmer would be last because of what would need to be put into place before that. I can run through that on a schedule basis. And that would be deliberated upon by the building committee. So I don't want to run ahead of the building committee. I'm just kind of picking up the thread
No, I understand.
where we last discussed it. Okay, And it's likely just because of, we know the first phase has to be the swing school, regardless of where it lands. And we know the second phase has to be Webb, just to allow the other schools to be able to fit into the school adjacent to the swing school. After that, you can shuffle the deck a little bit more, but how you work your way through the district has a purpose to it. And I don't want to preempt that decision making.
Right.
Even if it's not, certainly not, if the swing school isn't here, we know it's not phase 1, we know it's not phase 2, it's likely not phase 3. So it's 5 or 6 years out. Again, I may not be here, TSKP may not be here, I don't know how many of you will be here, but for everyone around, the town will have to pick up the issue of Hanmer at some point in time, and it will likely involve a discussion about Stillman yet again. As your decision-making has led you to this point right now, right? The kids are using that open space, the kids are using that playground. I mean, there's a reason you're there. Okay?
I think that is okay. We have guidelines in one way or another that allow us to modify in a fitting in way an existing structure and space so that it serves both purposes. It's a lot easier than redoing everything. So it's bringing it up to code or making it safer or more functional without a negative impact on the district, without threatening open space, without changing so much of the outside of the building that it doesn't fit in anymore as far, so that is already in place. So
Yeah,
that's good to hear.
Okay.
And it's good to hear about this school being the largest, so far so good, it's a top performing school in the town. So, I mean, something's done right. So it's good to know that we don't have to really change everything when that time comes. We just have to make it up to date with, like I said, code and, yeah.
Okay, well, that segues well into where I was headed with this portion of the presentation, which is a discussion of what is the nature of Hanmer right now. And if it's not part of a swing school discussion and removed in its entirety, eventually when the committee takes on its renovation and updating, I want to point out some important pieces of it. At a minimum, the perimeter of Hanmer needs to be addressed. It was built under a code in which if a school wasn't sprinklered, it needed direct access to the outside for egress. Since then, a full fire suppression system has been put in, which would be upgraded as far as a comprehensive renovation. While the parents of Hanmer like having the exterior doors as a second means of egress in the event of a security emergency, it really doesn't match with contemporary school construction or the Connecticut standards for safe school environments. So we would need to address all of those openings and doors around the perimeter, and we would need to address the front entrance of the school, which does not accommodate a true vestibule by which visitors can be credentialed before they have access to the interior. Also of significance is the cafeteria, which looks nicely out upon the Stillman open space. But if someone comes up to the school, they have pretty good sight lines and access to the cafeteria, again, before they're credentialed on the site. So that's very difficult to address. So that elements there of the front edge of Hanmer, which is specifically part of the HDC's preview, right? The portions of existing structures that are visible from public ways and access points. Eventually, we will need to, a design professional will need to address these pieces, and specifically what it means to come up and around that school in a safe and secure way. The other thing that I'll mention is, curiously, enough in 66 when the school was designed as the new Old Weathersfield Elementary School. It was almost immediately renovated yet again in 71 for the additional classroom addition. That style was done very similar with the rest of the building, but it does represent, again, perhaps less of a yield per square foot, and it does push the building further into the interior of the lot. So I'd be interested in this commission's view about perhaps selectively taking down wings in order to right-size the school for its square footage. The reason you would do that is the state typically funds schools up to a certain square footage that's based on their student population. Hanmer, in this instance, would be over its square footage. And if you could reconfigure the back part of Hanmer, you could not only help right-size that for the grant, get the classrooms into a more appropriate size, but you could also create some more air around that school so that you could better monitor and protect the perimeter from just a school operations standpoint.
So based on those statements, you would contemplate the 1971 addition to be removed entirely?
I don't,
Or not, again?
yeah, I would be interested in your thoughts of what if we put a two-story classroom wing behind the cafeteria and gymnasium in order to more lightly touch the site in favor of more open space and a more efficient classroom arrangement.
But I think as we preface the meeting, we do not, you would have to see plans, obviously, and then I feel uncomfortable.
Well, the proof in all these is in the pudding, for sure.
Sure. No, as Chris mentioned, and maybe Bruce or Katie, right, we are open to modifications. I mean, look, you mentioned in the center of town, the Webb Dean Stevens Museum that they added. Certainly, we recognize that the principal just wanted to move a sign. She came in front of us at Hanmer because people don't know where the main entrance is in this building.
Well,
we're aware of that.
Yeah,
But again, I'm just one commissioner, and like you said, I may not be here at that time. But does anyone else have any?
Yeah, to go back what you said earlier about the cafeteria being open and things like that. And the preliminary plan you have for where you want to put the swing school, has this been discussed with our police department, our fire department?
it has.
And they're okay with this?
They've given us good comments about access to all of the swing school sites.
All the swing school sites?
All of
But
them.
the question I guess I'm getting at is our police chief moved a corn fest from Broad Street to the Cove Park because it was too accessible. He couldn't protect the people there, from what he said. From what he moved it from there because it was accessible from both sides. Here we're wanting to put a swing school with Hartford Avenue on one side, Garden Street on the other side.
Yeah.
I would be curious to hear from our police chief what he actually has to say about that, since he moved venues because of that concern.
No, I agree with what you're saying in general. I mean, I just want to be clear, whatever plan happens on this site has to satisfy this board, has to satisfy P&Z, has to satisfy the town's professional staff. It's compromising things like police and fire safety. No one's recommending any of that.
I was just curious because we're proposing a swing school that sits right in the middle of our park. Accessible not only from Garden Street, Hartford Avenue, Knott Street, and, as you show us here, Francis Street.
Right.
It's all four sides.
Right, like the Standish School was when students were there. Now, Standish hasn't had students in it since Sandy Hook, when everything changed in this state about school construction. But
I don't know
but
that one.
Probably no students since '66, but
I'm just
and the
saying
correct use
that
was originally understandable, yeah.
having a school on a town green, I mean, every third town in Connecticut has that situation. I'm confident there are ways to satisfy the school safety standards for access to that school.
But I look at the rest of the schools in the town of Weathersfield. Highcrest was built right around Hanmer. It's down below street level, access only from one side. You look at Mitchell School, I mean, not Mitchell, but Charles Wright. It's accessible from the front only, vehicular-wise. You look at Emerson Williams, same thing.
Yeah.
If you look at all our schools, we have never placed a school in the middle of a field.
Okay. Well, I try not to say words
With
like,
houses on all sides.
okay.
You know, that's why I'm questioning the proposal to put it.
Yeah, I can tell you that Charles Wright and Emerson Williams were eliminated from swing school site consideration, even though they have a lot of open space around them, partially because of that single point of access made them unworkable as...
For the swing school.
Not only as swing school, but in some ways, Charles Wright needs some significant improvement in its traffic loops because its frontage on Knott Street is so limited.
Okay.
Hanmer, while it's in the site so tightly compared to Charles Wright, for instance, or even Emerson Williams, benefits because of that Rosedale to Garden Street loop. At least you can get to it from two public right-of-ways, which is thought to be an asset if you are contemplating managing traffic, fire emergencies, anything like that. If one of your entrances go down, you still want to be able to get emergency personnel on the site.
All right, thank you.
Could you pull up the front picture again of, because you talked about the vestibule and the checking in and
Yeah.
clearance. Because, right, there is no car traffic on that part of Francis Street up to the Stillman building, the BOE parking lot. So you mentioned the vestibule. I mean, that is, you know, again, I'm not ruling on anything here, obviously, or haven't seen plans, but that would seem to be a natural site where that sidewalk is and the blacktop to build your entranceway. You talked about alterations to the exterior.
It would,
Yeah, that's a,
yeah, having not really designed it, my thinking,
but that provides you
it
with
would
that.
be
some of your
more than an
solutions.
alteration, it'd likely be an addition. And we would need to change the character of the fenestration in front of the cafeteria, I think, just so.
And then that allows you that extension kind of down to where you see the glass was the caf and the gym there, just past the gas meters.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so those are things we rule on all the time, and that as a comprehensive rehab of that building, you know, everything is on the table. But you know, what is primary for me is that location.
Yeah, what I see is a lot more brick than glass. So
Absolutely.
it's almost a safer school, and others, just from that standpoint alone, you're already starting with an advantage to just modify it to bring it up to code, and in a way that blends in with the similar architectural angles and suggestive, you know, outline. The big reason this school works is because of its silhouette, its profile. It's not 2 stories. And I think it'd be a mistake to alter the back, that later addition, to 2 stories when you can spread it out more with the existing 1 story, and you have the space to do it because you're not now putting a school in the middle of the park. You might have to sacrifice a little bit of where those basketball hoops are, a little more, but it's better than losing the whole recreational area that the students would need. That's how I see. much more, appropriate, but blending in way. It's more of a blend than a complete redo. No matter what the design is of any new building, it goes even further than that. We're in many different publicly accessed documents, we have to consider, just from our purview, well, right here, the applicant must demonstrate that there is no prudent alternative to demolition or removal. We already have an alternative. And also, it's not just the building, it is the spaces. So we have to preserve that building best we can, be consistent, keep the commission relevant, and also the space around it, for many reasons. I don't want to make the meeting longer, but I have pages and pages of character and sight lines and even mature trees that we can consider. There's so many things that go into what that space is, more than just a field that can be built on or not. But it goes back to that first part where it says, no, when it talks about demolition, if demolition is proposed, it goes down to the applicant must demonstrate there is no prudent alternative to demolition or removal. I just have to repeat that. That's our baseline. So I go from there. It could be a beautiful school. I may want it. I may not want it. That doesn't matter. I feel my job on the commission is to go by because if we ever get challenged, this is what we have to go to. Hey, here. So I think it's a good idea to see this part of the plan, because it serves two purposes: preservation and safety. As you update something that's preserved, it works for everybody. It's right in that.
But basically, the point you're making is that regardless of how this goes forward, that Hanmer's going to need to receive significant modifications. So if I looked at that and said, I know I want that school just the way it is, what you're telling me is that that can't happen for a lot of code and safety reasons.
And yes, and as well as maybe a fiscal determination about the classroom yield per square foot of some of the existing geometry. Now, can the town make a value judgment to maintain the geometry at a penalty for classroom efficiency? Yes, you can do that. That's for the architect that eventually gets this commission to work out with this body to find out where that balance point is.
And when we talk about classroom efficiency, we're really talking about dollars, right? It ends up being, you can't just have a big classroom, because like some people like the classrooms at Hanmer because they're big. But
Right,
you're saying that there's a financial cost to that.
Well, beyond that, it's about right-sizing all of the elementary schools to try to bring a certain equanimity across the district as to what facilities you're providing to the elementary schools. Okay.
So right sizing is about, when you say right sizing, that's like, I go to a school and there's too much space. How is that a problem? That's a problem from a dollars standpoint or from an equality standpoint? Like I have more space than Johnny who goes to school somewhere else.
Probably both. I mean, we could also, frankly, if we could apply for a space waiver to the state and say this school is oversized because we can't touch the perimeter walls.
Right.
And yet
okay.
this is the last school in the system and to be renovated, and these are the kids that we have to send there. That's it. End of story.
Right.
Full stop. And then that's an appeal process that would need to take place from the grant administration. But beyond that, it's more about, in my mind, what is, stipulate the past history that led to Hanmer being built there and the architectural qualities that it brings to the overall historic district as a piece of late 60s, early 70s school architecture. Stipulate all of that. This is not how you would design a school nowadays, particularly how tight it is to the backyards of adjacent residential properties. It's better actually to have a clear field around your school that you can monitor and keep track of. Now we can, certainly in more urban environments, Hartford, New Haven, there are schools that exist in tight urban fabrics that are renovated and accommodations are made to provide secure environments, still bring light into the classroom, and deal with the neighbors. We can do that. But all of that has to be overcome along the way.
Yeah.
And are there costs associated with it? Absolutely. Does it have value to do that? I'm hearing from this commission that it absolutely has value to do that, and therefore it is in the town's interest to invest those costs in order to deliver the value by preserving this building. And I'm just, part of this discussion is to get a better sense from this commission directly about the rules of engagement. Like, how precious is the parking lot between the 1971 building and the Rosedale access, for instance? What can we do with that backyard, for instance? What could we do with the building that's back there? And if you're telling me that the 71 addition, because it's partially viewable from the parking lot off of Rosedale and Garden, should be preserved as much as possible until we can prove that there's no practical alternative to that, then that's an important standard for the building committee to be aware of today, and then the design professional that eventually gets tasked with this to understand as part of the architectural assignment. Okay?
Yeah, I imagine an extra space, why couldn't it just be used for something else in the meantime? Administrative, whatever. And-
Every square foot of the Hanmer site is being used right now. I mean, I don't think there's a spare square.
So what's the extra space we're talking about that would have to be dealt with?
Well,
With it?
2 classes will be gone.
Yeah.
Two grade levels are leaving.
2 grades.
Right, so that space then has to be used.
The existing square footage really should be reconfigured into clusters of 3 classrooms per grade, so that some sort of team teaching can occur at a given grade level. You have an excess of square footage in this school right now. Can we repartition it and use it for something else? Absolutely.
I would think that'd be preferable, because populations ebb and flow. Once you have the buildings built, take them down, then the population goes up again. If we're attracting more people to Old Weathersfield, their kids have to go to school, we might need that space. I wouldn't limit our options to removing anything, that's all I'm saying.
Now, I understand that thinking, and it's just a thing at the state level of
Sure.
school construction grant. They will allow you to future-proof up to 8 years out. And they don't really care what happens in year 9 if, a bunch of people move to your town. That's your next referendum in their mind. And that's the extent of future-proofing that they really will accommodate unless you go through an appeal process. Okay?
So the concept of right-sized is based on sort of that time frame. We're saying that we've determined that the right size for all these schools. So you told me that one component of the right-sized concept is that every school have a similar
Educational environment.
educational
That's
environment.
correct.
Okay, so there's that component. Are there any other components to the right-sized concept?
Yeah, there's the whole grant process, which is based on square foot per student that's in the space.
Okay.
And part of making 4, when you convert Webb over, you can then make the 4 remaining schools, K through 4, grades K through 4.
Yeah.
and then you can redistrict so that they all have approximately the same student population in
Okay.
them. And then that can drill down further to essentially getting about the same amount of students per classroom. So you don't have some elementary kids in the district with 27, 28 students in a classroom versus 19 or 20 kids in the classroom. Those are conceptually fundamentally different educational years for those two students, in theory.
Yeah.
Now, a lot can be overcome by the strength of the faculty, and in fact, that's what's carried Weathersfield up till now. It's certainly not the asset of the facilities.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So that's a lot of talking about it, but that's where we're looking. And if we repartitioned this and found that you had essentially a completely extra wing that didn't have an educational specification, the state's going to raise an eyebrow about that. And
Okay.
we would have to work with the town to respond to that, either by adding a program to this somehow that would require funding, or explaining it in some other way.
Would there be any thought of redistricting? I know you said all the schools should have the same number of students, but
Yeah.
would it be possible to bring more students to Hanmer just to use those classrooms more effectively? And maybe Hanmer would then be a bigger school, which again isn't maybe right sizing, but then Hanmer could be used more effectively.
Well, I mean, there's certainly precedent for that. I mean, both Emerson, William, and Highcrest are markedly larger school by population, and they experience different stress points than the other schools do. Curiously enough, Webb is one of your smaller populations, but they have the highest pupil per classroom density because they have the smallest classroom count and the smallest physical classrooms right now. So there's a lot of pieces to balance in all of that, and I understand what you're saying. The notion of that was set aside by the building committee up to this point as an idea of, well, let's anoint Hanmer as the largest school by population and work backwards from there. That was not a goal of the building committee up until now, up to this point anyhow.
You mentioned, and I'm looking at an aerial shot of Hanmer, so that parking lot that you're talking about that's utilized now by the 71 building there, I was kind of surprised with my daughter there and knowing it, my wife also graduated, and that was never allowed cars there until see that space where the lines?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, it shows that obviously teachers must be parking there or someone. So part of your perimeter, when you mentioned some alternatives, that, again, I don't know when that changed, that cars were allowed to park there, that it seems that that's an area of, would be of concern as well, too, when you talk about security. So I guess my point would be that everything could be on the table to the renovation of Hanmer where it is right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, all of this is a very instructive conversation for us in the building committee. I mean, I appreciate you being as candid as you're willing to do. Again, recognizing that none of us might be here when Hanmer is eventually tackled, but certainly whatever architect comes before you on Hanmer will say similar things, and whomever is seated as part of your commission will be drawing upon the same rule book and the same legacy that was done in 66 and 99 along the way. So,
Quick question about the Planning and Zoning Commission part of this. They came up with that Weathersfield 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development. And within that, I took a quote. Land was classified as dedicated open space if it was owned by an organization such as the town, the state, or the Great Meadow Conservation Trust, and kept for park or open space purposes. On their map, it shows that park in a different color as being preserved open space. How did they overcome that designation in their own plan? Let a school be proposed in that space. It's no longer open space.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for the planning and zoning. I mean, even your own guidebook cautions against taking selective excerpts from the overall comprehensive plan, right?
Well, this is something dedicated. They dedicated this space.
I understand what you're saying, but it is both a plan of conservation and of development. So I cannot speak for the P&Z in this matter, but I would caution anyone from selectively borrowing from your guidebook or selectively quoting from the plan of conservation and development. I just wouldn't do it. I'm going to roll forward just a little bit about schedule because that does talk about sequence. Again, this is the current plan, or the current recommendation under consideration by the building committee. Nothing has gone forward from the building committee to the Board of Ed or to the town council. The plan is still being formulated, but this is the scenario by which the swing school would, construction would start in 2027 at Stillman, and then be followed by phase 2, which is Webb, and then likely phase 3, which would be Charles Wright or Emerson Williams. Right now, it's just cast here as Charles Wright. And then at the end is that phase 6, which would remove Hanmer. Just saying that out loud, and that removal is 2034 plus or minus when we're looking that far out. And to your point about how do we guarantee that any of this will actually happen, that is an interesting point in two regards. One is at a minimum, the current plan is to split this into 2 referendums, so at least you secure both the swing school and the reformulation of Webb and one more school. And once that referendum is passed, in theory, you have the bonding capacity to execute 3 school construction grants in some sort of sequence, probably 1 a year for the next 3 years. So that gets you more than halfway, in theory. Towns like South Windsor and Manchester, who have done this recently, the second referendum passed with more approval than the previous one from a percentage standpoint, because success breeds success. So once you do it successfully, everybody, once their neighborhood school addressed, they understand that this board can be trusted with the resources of the community, that the building committee can be trusted, that the town can be trusted, and that these things can in fact happen without disasters occurring. Another curious thing that we've been reviewing with both the overall town is that some of the swing school sites involve displacing athletic fields, right? That would not come back into play until the existing school is demolished. The existing nearby school is demolished. This occurs at Highcrest and this occurs at Hanmer, right? In the instance of Stillman, we're building upon the Standish Ballpark, and in the instance of Highcrest, we're building on top of those existing soccer and baseball fields. So we're reviewing with DAS, how do you protect money to replace those fields 10 years out as part of that initial grant application? So that would be another way to guarantee that some funding could be still available down the road to make whole either the Stillman site or something else, would be another mechanism. That's another piece of the puzzle. But that's, to the extent that anything can be guaranteed, that's about the extent of levers that we could see being pulled in order to help protect the overall town's interest.
Go along with what you just said. You've got phase 1, phase 2, all of them up there, and you have the new Stillman. What happens to the phases if we don't build it at Stillman? Do they remain the same?
No, that would be this scenario, which would be a swing school in what was thought to be the second and third best sites in the town, which would be Keisha or what we call High Crest North, which is where the soccer fields are at High Crest. Of all the sites that we evaluated in the town, we came up with 3 potential ones, and that's what you would do. So the swing school would go there. A High Crest population would move into the swing school. Webb would occur. All the 5th and 6th graders would go to Webb, and then you would do the other 4 sites from here. In this scenario, we moved Hanmer to the end, and no offense to this commission, but it's in part because of concerns about the timeliness of action that this commission may take to evaluate concerns about a Hanmer redesign. In other words, at the end of the 3rd referendum, you only have 2 more schools to do. Time is your enemy, because the longer you wait, the more construction costs, because construction's cost in almost never go down. So the idea is in that 2nd referendum, you would clear out the next 2 schools, and that would create funding for the town to hire an architect or architects to do the last 2 schools. They could authorize both at the same time so that the design of Hanmer could proceed a year in advance of what you would normally do, which would give this board plenty of time to review the various specifics of it and to give a more robust negotiation time with the state about anything that might fall out of that.
We keep coming back to this board. We have 65 days to make a decision when you come before, when somebody puts an application before us. We have 65 days.
Right.
So I don't see where 65 days is going to make a big difference in what you're referring here to.
Yeah.
Well, out of this whole thing, you keep talking about we put the swing school in Stillman, we displace a large parcel of land that's athletically used. If you put it at Keisha, we don't lose anything. We keep all of our fields, and actually, we have to create a field for that school.
I
For
completely
recreational
agree. Yeah,
services.
this
So I'm not seeing, I really don't see the, we're asking the town, we do this, we got to build replace fields. Well, if we put it at Keisha, we don't have to replace anything. We're going to build a field along with the school.
I think the building committee came to that same conclusion. We agree with regards to fields, that Keisha is a net add of fields.
So I guess my question comes down to, why is the Stillman Field such a prime spot?
Why is it such a prized spot? There are 3 sites in this whole town that
I understand.
make a decent swing school site, a viable swing school site.
Right.
And they are Stillman, Keisha, and High Crest North. And you can rank them in whatever order meets your priorities, and I can do the same. The building committee did that and came up with Stillman as the preferred site.
Again, I ask, what makes Stillman the number 1 site? You were at, I'm taking you were at all the
Yeah.
building committees.
Yeah.
What makes us the number 1 site in Old Weathersfield?
Well, I mean, there's a long matrix where the
Well,
objective and
the reason I ask
subjective
this,
qualities of the sites were voted on, and this is what they are. And it doesn't mean that, again, anytime we show this chart in public, it doesn't mean count the red squares and score it. It means this is what each of these categories scores, and then weigh these categories based on how you feel the priorities of the town should be. Where does the value for the town reside among these categories? And when that was presented to the building committee, a vote was taken, and some people voted for Stillman and others voted for other sites, but that's how the vote turned up as the current recommendation.
Yep.
And just like before we made this recommendation, the building committee cast a very wide net to listen to the public and take their input. They made this selection and went back out to the public and are taking their input, and that's why we're here now, because the public said resoundingly, you have to see the HDC, which frankly wasn't contemplated in, say, the 2022 referendum, right? The idea of coming to see you, regardless of what was going to happen to Hanmer, didn't enter into the equation. So that's why we're before you now.
Yeah, it's appreciated. I'm just surprised that people involved in the project and know the value of Old Weathersfield and how it's held in regard among the residents and the whole town. And it surprises me that the most legally protected option became first choice, because I don't see that in any of these charts. Nothing says we could have problems with this. Is the most protected area in town.
Well, was that one of the qualitative concerns that it was in the historic district? Is that somewhere on this?
We seem to be cut off here. Are those all the reasons?
No, look at that. That's really cut off. Well, I will say that the idea of what to do with the existing Hanmer if you built Stillman, given the comments that we're hearing now from both the public and this commission, wasn't weighed in this matrix, certainly.
As far as schedule's concerned, I would think the Stillman School would come before this commission, even though it's not a historic building. It would be built in the historic district. And were there any thoughts of that? I mean, if there's concerns about what happened to Hanmer causing a delay, are there concerns about that causing?
No, it's definitely a concern, particularly now. I mean, given what we've heard over the past 2 months, really, it's specifically a concern. And I respect that this commission understands that it's on a 65-day clock once a formal application is made, but that doesn't necessarily protect the town's interest against, say, an appeal about that, which could really bog down the project. And it can get bogged down in phase 1 or it can get bogged down in phase 5, but either way, it gets bogged down, and that's not in anyone's interest when you're dealing with public money.
So as you presented these 3 options, identifying the 3 spaces in town. Was a recommendation made, or it was presented to the building committee and they then chose based on the matrix you just showed us and other factors, I'm sure?
Yeah, the building committee asked us to advance the comprehensive plan using Stillman as the swing school site, which is what we have started to develop and bring back out to the public as part of the committee's continued outreach.
Well, that's shortchanging your expertise, but you had to present to them the sites, you identified the sites.
Yeah, that color matrix came out of Downs and TSKP's office.
And in your professional opinion, you did not render one. Is that what you're saying? You gave 3 options and let the building committee run with that.
The building committee. And that inverts the agency in a way that I'm not quite comfortable with. We were clear.
But we're transparent here, so.
Yeah, we were clear with the building committee why each of those categories had that specific color and what the comments meant for each of those sites and each of those criteria. But it would be it would not be appropriate for us to necessarily recommend to Weathersfield how to weigh each of those categories. Just like it would be inappropriate for me to show up to you and tell you how to value the existing Hanmer school. Because I went to architecture school, I could tell you it's the best piece of 1971 school architecture in the world, or it's a piece of junk, it should be torn down. That doesn't mean anything to you. It's your building, and you're here to weigh on its value.
You're shortchanging your professionalism. I mean, you were tasked to come up with some solutions for them to consider.
Right.
And
I guess I'll be very...
acreage,
yeah.
I didn't see any acreage, any of the matrix sizes of the sites where there was that.
Yeah.
That was up there, yeah, we were
That
cut
was a
off.
consolidated piece from a
Many, I'm
larger
sure.
ongoing
Yeah.
matrix, but I think everyone
That's what
was
you're
aware
presenting
that-
to us
that
tonight. Yeah.
The Hanmer is 5 acres and Stillman is 6, and those are true outliers in the size of sites for elementary schools in the town of Weathersfield. Right. So,
Yeah, we're just trying to fathom, and as Bruce had mentioned, that why this site was chosen. And I mean, that, I think, is why you're hearing from the public now. I don't believe a lot of this was disseminated, and I could be wrong, because I do try to stay up on that, and it just didn't seem, and I appreciate the work that
yeah.
that this group does, obviously, but just trying to wrap our head around it.
Yeah, everything we go by and everything we've heard from residents, it's all publicly accessible. It's on our website. I wish we were involved earlier. We would have avoided some kind of false starts, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess hindsight is something of interest here. I will say that I truly appreciate this board coming together on a special meeting to review the notion of an application. I'm not sure how often you truly do this, to be honest. And I don't think this is definitely an important endeavor that the town is undertaking and deserves perhaps special attention more than most applications. But I feel like both planning and zoning and your board is built to weigh the merits of a specific application. So I appreciate this advance piece, knowing that we haven't designed a single thing yet.
I guess I just find it hard, personally, that we're like the #1 site with all the regulations, our rules and regulations, historical, traffic, everything, that we were viewed as the #1 site when you could go to Keisha Farms and it's wide open. You don't have to, I mean, they say they have some wetlands, but that's been dealt with in town before. Collier Farms was built on wetlands. I'm finding it hard that you want to come down, not you, I take that back. That the committee wants to build a school smack dab in the middle of a park. And I don't care how you look at it. It's a park. It's been a park for hundreds of years. And go back to just what Commissioner Lynch said. Former commissions went and bought land so that they didn't have to disturb the park. And yet you're here before us trying to get our feel for putting a school right dab smack in the middle of it.
Okay.
I look at this board up here, And it's mind-boggling to me, really, that we're even here. I'm just, really, that's my opinion. We can't vote on anything right now. I'm just stating my opinion.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate everything that's being said, and I appreciate the candid spirit by which it's being offered. Certainly, if this becomes phase one, even if it's not TSKP doing the work, you're likely going to receive this application. So might as well get a preview now.
Yep, we're getting it.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other thoughts or questions, concerns, misgivings, consternations?
Any commissioners have anything? Chris? No? Good?
I'll just go as far as, say you put the motion before us, and we have to vote on putting the swing school down here, and we deny it. I'm just assuming we could deny it or approve it. But say we deny it. Now we go to the demolition of the old Hanmer school. I'm just finding it hard again that you'd want to test us, not this board, but all the boards before. That's not our goal as the Historic Commission, is to tear down. Our goal is to preserve as best we can. And I could read you the book where, just because derelict of maintenance, that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse to tear something down. In fact, you're going to use the school to put other students in it. If we should happen to vote to allow the swing school to be built here, you want to tear Hanmer down, and then we would have a hard time coming up with a reason if we go by our guidelines to tear it down.
Okay.
We just would have a hard time. There's nothing wrong with the school. Yeah, does it need maintenance upgrades? Yes, it does. Just like your house does, just like everything does. But to tear it down and say it doesn't exist anymore. I'm speaking solely for myself now. I can't speak for the rest of the commissioners. But if I go by the guidelines, I can't tear it down.
Okay.
And we hold the town to the same standards as we would a homeowner. We talked about Stillman and the renovation there as well, too. That slate roof was not done, and I recognize Sally here, who does a wonderful job for us, that she had come up with alternatives, but we maintained the character because the roof was not done at that time. It was not needed when it was renovated in that 99 frame, but they did put the slate back on. The Firehouse One on Main Street, cedar shakes, because when it was reoriented to the side, right or wrong, cedar shakes had to go back on that structure. So again, to piggyback on what's being said here, in hindsight you can't use, but there is, it is hard to wrap our arms around how this was chosen, in my opinion, and I do appreciate the work that was done.
Oh, we appreciate everything you explained everything as best that you could. I mean,
we're open. And a prime example is some members on the commission when the Webb Dean Stevens Museum why was that not pushed back? And again, so we do consider, we don't want to replicate an historic structure. That is not, but as Bruce meant, demolition by neglect is something that we strive not to have happen.
And also, we will avoid precedent setting that would hurt the district. And when we deal with applications where it says, unless it's proven that it doesn't negatively affect the district, it goes through. Well, if a few, and then rightly so, if a few solar panel applications were turned down because it can be detrimental to the district, tearing down a school and building another school and everything that goes with it, where they got to redesign the roads and the lights and the noise, that is a major impact. So it's just that, that's like, it's probably as big of a job as we'll get as far as deciding on something that'll impact the district. I mean, you'll see the lights from 91 in the fall time. You know, so it's going to be noticeable. Yeah.
But obviously, part of the job of preservation, too, is the continued relevance of these buildings, right? We're not a museum. We're not just preserving buildings to preserve buildings. Their reinvention, their continued dynamism, their continued contribution to the community is the way that we ensure their preservation. So so when we're talking about Hanmer, you know, I take your point that it's going to need some serious work. It's going to need some reconfiguring, reinvention, and that's going to involve, you know, a lot of imagination and potentially a lot of money.
Well, I mean, all these schools do. Hanmer, we just have to understand, I think you've given us some good talking points for the building committee about what it will mean to eventually renovate Hanmer, and consequently where this board's sense of value is on certain aspects of that building. And that's fine. That's good. It's good information. And how did we get this far? This is where we are. And in 2022, my counterpart never even showed up to you. So this commission is committed to getting the best comprehensive plan that balances all the town's values before the voting public and make that recommendation to the Board of Ed and to the town council. So I really, again, I can't thank you enough for your willingness to take this on as a thought exercise, given where we are in the process. Okay?
Thank you. Did any of your associates want to add anything, or you're going to wave the white flag? No.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Any commissioners have anything else?
No, I just want to thank you very much. We appreciate you coming for us.
Thank you.
And explaining things that we've heard, but nobody's put it in words in front of us. So you helped us out a great deal in explaining what's on this and everything. So thank you again. I appreciate you have taken the time in coming here.
Yeah, definitely. What helps us
happens to
too
be my
is,
job. You all are volunteers, but it happens to be my job, but I appreciate it. So
what helps us big time is people who would normally ask us all of these questions, they finally just get to see it through streaming or whatever, a lot of what they don't usually hear us say. So it's clear to them now what HDC is either responsible for, you know.
And maybe a good time, too, to also mention that we approve almost 99% of all applications that do come in front of us, so that to dispel some of the urban myths out there. Thank you.
very good. Very
Okay,
good.
and that concludes the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.